Y estamos en vivo una vez más directamente del canal de Carlos Mercader, directamente de La Diestra. Agradecido del apoyo que nos vienen dando a través del tiempo por el contenido que estamos produciendo aquí de este canal. Si a usted le gusta lo que ve, dele like, suscríbase, comente. Mire, hoy es un día súper especial, porque hoy está con nosotros un invitado especial. Aquí hay una persona que algunos le dicen, ese es el gobernador de Puerto Rico. No, ese es el que manda en la isla. Es porque él es el director ejecutivo de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal de Puerto Rico. Y para entender bien cuál es su rol, para entender bien cuál es el rol de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal, para entender bien el trabajo que hacen ellos aquí en Puerto Rico y que han estado haciendo en este tiempo, para entender bien el tema fiscal de Puerto Rico. ¿Dónde está Puerto Rico hoy? Hoy lo vamos a entrevistar a él. Él es Robert Mujica, que le damos la bienvenida aquí al canal. Bienvenido, Robert. ¿Cómo estás?
Saludos, Carlos. Y gracias por invitarme a tu podcast. Es un placer estar aquí.
Para mí es un privilegio, para mí es un placer. Y Robert, mira, lo primero por donde yo quiero comenzar esta conversación, antes de entrar en el tema de la Junta, antes de entrar en el tema de tus roles, lo que está ocurriendo hoy día, yo quiero que la gente sepa, porque yo conozco algo de tu trasfondo, pero la gente sepa de dónde viene Robert Mujica a interesarse por Puerto Rico. O sea, viene de un interés puramente pues, de que te conseguiste un buen trabajo o de que tú anteriormente ya conocías de Puerto Rico.
Yeah. This is about 50 years in the making for me, right? My family is from Arecibo. They've been in Arecibo for generations. My grandmother's 95. She still spends part of the year in Arecibo. And I spent all my summers there. Every summer, I learned how to swim there. I go to the beaches there. But I grew up in New York. And I grew up in New York, and I always had a close tie. Always felt like, mi sangre de Puerto Rico. And my whole career was around budgets, though. I worked in government. Yo era director de presupuesto en Nueva York. Más largo en historia.
¿Cuánto tiempo estuviste ahí?
8 años.
8 años.
8 años. Y the average is 2 años. And while I was director of the budget there, I was there during recessions. I was there during Hurricane Sandy. I was there during 9/11. So we went through a lot of crises together, right? When it was 9/11, I was in the legislative side, but I was still director of the budget for El Senado. So when Maria hit, New York and Puerto Rico have very strong ties.
Pero antes de que vayas para allá, sí. No te vayas todavía para un huracán. Vamos primero, cuéntame un poquito. Tú estuviste en 9/11 cuando ocurrió lo de las Torres Gemelas. ¿Estabas ya trabajando en la legislatura en Nueva York?
Sí.
¿Y cómo fue eso? Explícame, cuéntame eso un poquito.
Actually,
eso tiene que...
It's actually interesting because, politics in New York, are complicated. We were in a budget fight during that year in 2001, and we had no budget. The budget is supposed to be done on March 31st, April 1. It was September, and we still had no budget because the legislature and the governor were fighting.
Wow.
No budget. And then the terrorist attacks happened. And then we passed the budget quickly, and then we had to recover. And back then, the stories were New York is never going to recover. People don't want to live in New York anymore, right? And, we had to work. How do we manage the budget? How do we manage the recovery? How do we get the federal aid in order to recover, right? And I learned from that disaster what it takes to recover, right? And we all worked together at that time. Similar, I think, probably to Puerto Rico, right? All of the fights around the budget and the partisanship ended, and everyone got together because we have to build back New York.
Pero detalles de cómo se pudo haber manejado eso en aquel momento o lo que se pudo haber vivido, para que la gente sepa. La legislatura de Nueva York está en Albany. Sí. O sea, no está en Nueva York. Mucha gente puede pensar que el centro del gobierno de Nueva York es la ciudad de Nueva York, pero no lo es. Es en la capital de Nueva York, que es Albany. Y en ese momento tú estabas en Albany.
Sí.
Ah, ok. O sea que...
Sí. Y mi mamá estaba en Nueva York. Y mi mamá estaba ahí mismo.
No,
When the terrorist
de
attacks
verdad.
happened. Sí.
Ahí en Manhattan.
Sí, ahí en Manhattan, ahí al lado, the building. When the first plane hit, I called her. I was on the phone with her. When the second plane hit, I was on the phone with her. When the towers collapsed,
Oh, wow.
I was on the phone until it cut off because it collapsed. And then I did not hear from her again for about maybe 9 hours. And she walked from Manhattan all the way to where we lived in Staten Island. So we lost contact during that time.
Wow. Este caso es una experiencia.
It was a personal thing, right? She worked for actually the government at the time.
Okay.
She worked for the mayor's office at the time.
Ok. Wow.
Yeah.
Increíble. Siempre, ¿verdad? Esa historia, yo creo que todo el mundo que vivió, aún viviendo aquí en Puerto Rico, o sea, por ejemplo, yo me acuerdo, yo estaba de camino a la universidad en Mayagüez y todavía lo recuerdo perfectamente cuando escuchando radio, dice uno de los que tiene un programa de radio aquí en Puerto Rico, Rubén Sánchez, yo me acuerdo lo estaba escuchando y él dice, adiós, un avión le acaba de dar ahí a un edificio. O sea, pero lo dice como natural. Hasta que pasa el segundo, que lo estaban viendo ya, y pasó el segundo que dio. Y ahí fue que yo llamé a mi mamá por teléfono. Yo iba tarde para mi clase. La llamo y le digo, mami, ponte la televisión porque es que algo está pasando.
Sí.
Y entonces de allá después, recuerdo todo ese día. Ese día fue impactante. Así que me imagino ustedes allá en Nueva York que tiene que haber sido... Bueno, tiene que haber... Yo no sé si ustedes ni habrán dormido esos días por toda la conmoción que estaba ocurriendo.
No, it's hard to even, understand what was going on at that time. Because you didn't know if there was something going to happen the next day, the next week.
Sí.
So.
Bueno, o sea, tú has manejado crisis. Pero entonces, tú eres de Puerto Rico, tu familia es de Puerto Rico, tu abuela aún vive en Puerto Rico. O sea, aún pasa tiempo en Puerto Rico, tú eres de Arecibo. Y comenzaste a hablar del huracán María. Yo primero voy a hablar del huracán María para decir de dónde es que yo te conozco a ti. Cuando ocurrió el huracán María, estamos hablando de septiembre del 2017, ocurre que ya entre el gobernador Cuomo y el gobernador Rosselló había una relación previa. Cuomo había sido el secretario de la Vivienda Federal cuando el papá de Ricardo Rosselló, Pedro Rosselló, había sido gobernador. Y siempre había habido una buena comunicación entre los gobiernos. Cuando yo dirigía la oficina de Puerto Rico en Washington, yo hablaba mucho con los que manejaban todo el asunto con Washington de Nueva York. Y entonces pasa el huracán y ustedes son el primer vuelo que llega a Puerto Rico después de ese septiembre 20, que fue el huracán María. Cuéntame tú, o sea, el gobernador te dice, vente conmigo, Robert, tú tienes familia en Puerto Rico, móntate, o sea, ¿cómo se da esa dinámica de ustedes allá de gobierno para venir a Puerto Rico a ayudar?
Yeah. As you point out, there was a relationship already between the governor of New York and the governor of Puerto Rico. And their fathers had a relationship, so they had a relationship. I would come to New York with the governor prior to Maria. Come to Puerto Rico with New York prior to Maria for conferences and different events. Every year, I accompanied the governor.
Y venías a Puerto Rico.
And we would come to Puerto Rico.
Hacían lo de Somos,
Somos el Futuro, era
sí,
conferencia that we would come and all the elected officials would come.
Uh-huh.
So he was always interested. But when the hurricane happened, how do we help? How can I get there? How can we get assistance there? I was budget director at the time, and he put me in charge of communicating with the government. That's where you and I met. It's where I met Omar Marrero after that. And we got on the first plane that was allowed, commercial flight that was allowed to land in Puerto Rico. He arranged it and made sure that we were on that plane. If we weren't allowed to land, he was going to figure out one way to get here or another. And that wasn't, for him, it wasn't just a political thing. We had supplies. We brought supplies. We also, over the next few months, brought hundreds of people from New York to volunteer. People to work in La Sistema Eléctrica. We brought engineers. We brought police. But he put me in charge of working. We had just gone through Hurricane Sandy in New York.
Exacto.
And we had gone through 9/11. So we had actually had to deal with going to Congress and getting the money. And he knew that it was urgent and we need to do it fast. puts me in charge. Since I'm the director of the budget, everything in New York, el director de presupuesto is probably the government position que es más importante de all of the government positions because money connects to everything. And he put me in charge of that effort. Governors came and visited, and we eventually worked and put together the Build Back Better plan for Puerto Rico. And that was something that's still in my I have the early drafts of that report on my computer, and we worked with you and with the government.
Sabes que ahí, en ese momento, yo me acuerdo como ahora que me senté con... Yo ahora, el nombre se me escapa. Yo no sé si él también se llamaba Andrew, no me acuerdo. Que era uno de los que trabajaba con la oficina de Nueva York en Washington. Y él me envió, yo creo que todavía yo conservo eso. Él me envió todas las tablas, todos los Excels que ellos habían hecho, que ustedes hicieron, para lo del los fondos de Sandy. Y él me hizo como el whip list de todos los congresistas y los asks que habían hecho y cómo los habían hecho. Y cómo era, o sea, cómo uno hacía como... Él fue el que me enseñó cómo hacer un blitz en el Congreso para poder trabajar directamente con el ask que íbamos a hacer de los fondos de SDBG, de FEMA, etc. E incluso, me acuerdo como ahora, unos años un año después creo que fue, creo que se cumplían 5 años de que Sandy había pasado por Nueva York. Y fuimos, nos invitó el gobernador Cuomo, y fuimos porque creo que para ese año, y este es el recuerdo que tengo, quizás estoy equivocado, lo que te voy a decir ahora, pero tuvimos unas reuniones allá en la ciudad, tú estabas, y los gobernadores se montaron dieron una vuelta por la recuperación, cómo estaba nuevo. Y me acuerdo perfectamente que creo que ese año iban a gastar el dinero, el 28, 29 y 30 billones de dólares que creo que eran 31 que le habían asignado, algo así. Y creo que ese era el año que iban a haber utilizado esa cantidad de dinero. Así que Nueva York fue bien importante en aquel momento cuando estuvimos trabajando en el Congreso con eso. Y todo el equipo de ustedes. Aquí hay una foto, que no sé si la podemos poner un momento para que la gente la vea. Esto es una foto de cuando en un momento dado el gobierno de Nueva York hace un grupo de ayuda con Puerto Rico que se llamaba New York Stands with Puerto Rico. Y esto fue en Albany también. Esto fue posterior a una de las conferencias de Somos. Estábamos allí. Ahí ustedes ven, ¿verdad? Los que puedan ver, estoy casi al frente de la bandera de Estados Unidos hablando. Y Robert está más a la derecha. Y que quien está en el medio, que en aquel momento era la vicegobernadora, la lieutenant governor, que era Katie Hochul, que hoy día es la gobernadora del estado de Nueva York y para quien también tú trabajaste posteriormente.
That's right.
Así que nada, esta introducción, Robert, importante yo creo para sentar las bases de que tu interés por Puerto Rico ha estado siempre. Un interés que lo llevas en la sangre, pero en el corazón y que lo has demostrado a través del tiempo con tu trabajo, donde estuviste tanto en la Asamblea Legislativa en Nueva York como después cuando dirigiste la Oficina de Gerencia y Presupuesto de Nueva York. Así que de ahí llegaste a Puerto Rico y llegas a una situación inusual. ¿Inusual por qué? Pues estamos en quiebra. Y algo que yo siempre trato de explicar y la gente como que se lo olvida, pero bajo el ordenamiento federal de ley, lo que pasa en Puerto Rico no puede pasar en ningún estado. Aun cuando estén posiblemente en quiebra, no se pueden declarar en quiebra. Más sin embargo, Puerto Rico se declara en quiebra por promesa. Cuéntame tu approach, tu acercamiento inicial a toda esta situación que dices, ¿cómo se compara, cómo se contrasta con lo que tú estabas haciendo anteriormente en Nueva York?
Yeah. Well, that picture, it's interesting to see that because it seems like it's yesterday. It wasn't that long ago that we did that. And I was wanting to help Puerto Rico for my own personal reasons, right? And my family's reasons. And because also when you're in New York, it's over 1 million people who live in New York who have family members in Puerto Rico. So it was important for New Yorkers that we help. And then I wasn't following the finances in Puerto Rico, right? This was just about 2 months, put a plan together, make sure we can get in front of Congress, and you were part of that whole effort. And then, I get a call regarding Promesa and taking this position. And I had actually gotten a call about this in the middle of the budget time, probably like 7 months earlier. And I was in the middle of the budget in New York, and I didn't know anything about it, hadn't followed the bankruptcy. Then I get a call from one of our board members, and Dr. Betty Rosa. She runs the education system in New York. And she called me and asked me if I would consider it. And, I thought about it, hadn't thought about it at all. My plan was to end being budget director and, go quietly into my private life for the first time, because I've been working in government for 25 years. And I was at the end of it. I had the longest serving budget director in the history of New York. I had done it all, gone through all the crises.
Interesante que tú trabajabas en la asamblea, en la legislatura de Nueva York con los republicanos, ¿correcto?
That's right.
Y como demócrata te nombra.
Yeah.
O sea, que eso posiblemente también ayudó a que tú fueras una persona que estuviera tanto tiempo que tú bregabas con todo el mundo.
I worked for the Republicans in New York, and Cuomo was a very hands-on governor. So I would be across the table from him. And him and I would get into some disagreements sometimes. And then it was a mutual respect as professionals. And that's why I think notwithstanding the fact that I was working for the Republicans, he brought me across the aisle. It was controversial, but to do that. And then from there, again, I served as budget director for almost 8 years under him, working for the Democrats. But it goes to show the bigger point, which is from the finances perspective, that's not about politics, right?
Sí.
I follow the direction, right, of the principal who's elected. But math is math. The accounting is the accounting. There's no different rules for New York, Washington, or Puerto Rico. And I bring that to the table. What I brought always is we have to figure out how to fund the needs of the people within the resources that we have. And what I found out in Puerto Rico, which was something that was still resonates with me today, and I say it all the time because I think it's important for people to understand how we got here, right? Por 16 años corridos, Puerto Rico gastó más que los ingresos. Cada año. You can't do that and then expect not to be in bankruptcy. If you did that in your house, you would be bankrupt, right? You'd be charging the credit card until you can't anymore. And that was the thing, that this is not about politics. This is about acting responsibly within what you have, right? I take the job very seriously because my job is not necessarily to pick the things that you do, but it's to make sure that they're done responsibly. If you want to fund something, then understand what that means for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. And it also means that you can't do the other thing. What I learned, what happened here, and again, I have a long history in budgets, is lack of decision-making in Puerto Rico is what resulted in what you are. Governing requires making tough decisions. That means sometimes saying no. And what happened for 16 years in a row, not enough no. And then you went bankrupt. And then Congress then decided, like you said, no state is allowed to go bankrupt. Puerto Rico couldn't go bankrupt either. Special act of Congress to allow it to happen. Promesa creates this board. My role, what I would hope to do here is to shut off the lights on Promesa. I want to end it. But the way to do that is to make sure that these things don't happen again.
Más adelante. Sí, pero entonces fíjate. Promesa pasó en agosto del 2016. Estamos en marzo del 2025. Ya van 9 años, o se cumplen 9 años ahora de la ley Promesa. Hay quienes cuestionan y dicen, ¿por qué todavía no se ha acabado de reestructurar la deuda? ¿Qué tú contestas con eso?
Yeah. One, we have to understand the history of what we have. It's been successful in terms of restructuring the debt so far. There have been 10 different entities in Puerto Rico that were bankrupt, and now the debt is restructured.
Vamos a explicar eso. Porque es que aquí se habla de la deuda de Puerto Rico como si fuera una sola. Y yo creo, y te voy a decir algo, Robert, vamos a hablar en plata. Yo estoy en los medios todos los días, estoy en la radio, estoy en la televisión. La gente este tema no lo entiende. O sea, la gente se le hace bien difícil. Y yo creo que tú explicaste algo que es bien importante y sencillo. ¿Por qué estamos aquí? Porque gastábamos esto y te podíamos gastar hasta aquí. O sea, eso es sencillo.
Por 16 años
Por 16
corrido.
años. Okay.
Corrido.
Ok. Ahí eso nos trae a donde estamos, a donde, ¿verdad? Lo que hemos estado viviendo últimamente. Pero entonces, cuando se dice, se ha reestructurado la deuda, es porque no es una sola deuda. La deuda viene de diferentes entidades del gobierno de Puerto Rico que habían asumido esa deuda. Y eran, ¿verdad? Y por llamarlo así, son deudas distintas. ¿Cómo tú explicas eso?
Yeah. There are, for example, we're in the middle of PREPA right now. Okay, that's the last one that's done. You had PRASA, you had the water company, you had the Commonwealth, you had PRIDCO, right? You had every single one of these entities issued debt, adding up to 73 mil millones. 58,000 pesos para cada familia en Puerto Rico. 58,000.
De deuda.
De deuda. So the government accumulated $73 billion in debt, which is equal to $58,000 for every household in Puerto Rico. Today, through what the board has done, we've cut that in half. We've cut that in half. For every dollar, and when the board was started, for every dollar that the government took in tax revenue, 25 cents had to go to pay for debt. Every dollar. Now, 6 cents goes to every debt. The difference now can now be invested in healthcare, in education, in all of the things that the people of Puerto Rico need, right? So most of the debt is restructured now. We've saved people of Puerto Rico $50 billion that if Promesa wasn't here, would have had to pay back. $50 billion.
More.
And the last one is PREPA. And PREPA is the most complicated because it affects people the most. The reason some people say, well, you should, why don't...
Déjame preguntarte algo, rapidito. En Washington, cuando toda esta discusión comenzó de Promesa, yo estaba ahí en Washington, ya yo no trabajaba nada de Puerto Rico, trabajaba con otras organizaciones, pero en el tema de esta discusión, cuando el Comité de Recursos Naturales de la Cámara y el Comité de Energía del Senado, en aquel momento, y de Finanzas, en aquel momento era el senador Orrin Hatch en el Senado, y acá en la Cámara estaba principalmente Rob Bishop, ambos de Utah, by the way. La discusión de la deuda era PREPA, era la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. O sea, eran los bonistas que estaban allí poniendo presión, cada vez que nos reuníamos, que había como una vista, digamos, una vista medio informal con los senadores y los congresistas, el tema era la deuda de la autoridad. Y yo digo, ¿verdad? Si esa fue la base para Promesa, ¿cómo es que esa deuda hoy día todavía no está resuelta? ¿Por qué es la última deuda que se está resolviendo?
Yeah. It's probably because the way the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico is not responsible for the debt of PREPA. PREPA is.
La corporación.
The corporation. And PREPA, lack of maintenance, lack of repairs, lack of investments for decades. Where that money went, I don't know. But it didn't go into fixing the system. We know the system is failing today. We know that the number of outages is going up, not going down. And in order to fix that requires additional money. The concern is, and this is why it's not done yet, is it would be easy to pay the debt and then put a tax on a people's bill to pay the legacy debt. The board doesn't believe today that there is enough room on the bill to be able to fix the system and also pay back all of the debt. So our plan is reduce the debt by 80%. Because we don't have enough money to fix the system and pay back all the debt. And that's why the board is here. The board is here. Number one was to make sure that PREPA needs to be a viable entity going forward. And it can't do that if it can't raise the money to fix the system. And the people of Puerto Rico have to be able to afford their electric bills. And you can't do both of those things. And that's why we are still here with PREPA. The easy answer would be pay the bondholders and then it would be closed. But it can't be at any cost because the people of Puerto Rico are then going to be paying for this for the next 30 years. And you'd have a system that's still not working. But that's the last one. And I want to go back. We've already done 10 different bankruptcies. We've adjusted that debt. We went from 25 cents of every dollar down to 6 cents of every dollar. This is the last piece. But Premesa wasn't only about restructuring the debt.
Pero vamos a explicar eso rapidito. Eso quiere decir que a 30 años, o sea, hoy estamos en el 2025 y estos acuerdos se hicieron hace un año, año y medio, 2 años. Eso quiere decir que por los próximos 28, 29 años, el gobierno de Puerto Rico, cuando hace el presupuesto, de 25 centavos que iba a tener que sacar de cada peso para pagar deuda, ahora tiene que sacar 6 centavos. ¿Correcto?
Exacto.
Ok. Bueno. Pero a eso se le va a añadir posteriormente lo que sea el acuerdo de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. Hablando sobre las necesidades de la autoridad, tú acabas de decir, hace falta dinero para construir la nueva o repararla, hace falta dinero para tener mejores métodos de transmisión, de generación de energía, hace falta toda una acción que conlleva mucho dinero. Y lo que hablábamos ahorita, hay unos fondos federales, hay unos fondos que vienen por el tema de la recuperación del huracán, donde según el rol de la Junta, como tu rol, el rol de donde tú estás, ¿dónde está hoy en día el tema de energía en Puerto Rico con miras a un futuro donde puedan los puertorriqueños decir tenemos un mejor sistema y tenemos un mejor acuerdo de cómo pagar la deuda?
Yeah. The board doesn't operate the system, right? But what we can do is make sure that the system has the resources necessary to repair itself and build for the future. What we don't want to do is have a debt burden on top of the system so that it's never going to be able to make the investments in the systems. The governor has a plan that she's working on, right, to invest in the system and get that done. The other point that we're making is the federal funds that you point out no está suficiente para reparar el sistema.
O sea que los eran 10.3 creo billones de FEMA plus 2.3 algo así más o menos de CDBG que estaban allí para lo del cost share y otras cosas. O sea que más o menos hay como 3, vamos a decir que entre eso y los fondos de emergencia eran como 17 billones de dólares.
Son 17.
Sí. 17. Pues la pregunta, eso no es suficiente.
Eso no es suficiente.
Anda, por el tirete.
Eso era to fix it post-Maria damage. But it wasn't to fix 40 years of lack of investment in the system. I'll give you an example. The average age of a facility in Puerto Rico is 45 years old. 45 years old. The average age of a generation facility in the States is 15 years old.
Okay.
It's old. It's failing. You don't need me to say it's failing.
No.
People see it.
Lo sabe todos los días. Todo el mundo.
Right? You don't need me to say
Mira, todos los días un puertorriqueño se levanta. Uno, se levanta y ve que el reloj del microondas o la estufa o del despertador está blinking.
Sí.
Está porque se fue la luz.
Para mí yo uso the ice tray. Cuando está todo congelado. Then I know that it went out.
Exacto, esos son, la gente lo ve todos los días, la gente lo ve y tú que vives aquí lo sabes. Yo creo que eso está claro. Pero lo que pasa es que también la gente viene escuchando esto desde hace mucho tiempo. Lo que la gente se pregunta es, va a cambiar en algún momento. O sea, realmente va a cambiar porque, y otra vez de manera anecdótica, de manera una anécdota, yo recuerdo quien dirigía Prepa cuando yo fui director de Prafa y cuando nos conocimos era Ricardo Ramos, el ingeniero Ricardo Ramos. Y me acuerdo, antes del huracán, esto fue a los 4 o 5 meses de la administración, o sea que maybe mayo o junio del 2017. A él va a una conferencia de prensa y le preguntan, porque él estaba haciendo como una revisión de la infraestructura de la autoridad. Y él viene y le pregunta a los medios y le dice, bueno, ¿cómo? Y él dice, bueno, si aquí viene un huracán fuerte, esto está tan malo que podemos estar hasta 6 meses sin energía. Y yo me acuerdo, yo funcionario del gobierno, y digo, él dijo eso, o sea, eso está público. Porque obviamente quien escucha eso dice, anda, esto está bien malo, pero él está siendo súper realista. Y te lo planteo porque desde incluso antes del huracán ya había un conocimiento público general de que este sistema estaba podrido, que no servía. Y él, me acuerdo que él usaba, acá internamente usaba una expresión, él decía que el sistema de energía de Puerto Rico estaba corriendo jumpers. Y eso, pues, ¿verdad? Es algo, es alarmante. Pero la pregunta que yo hago es, bueno, ¿y la gente? ¿Esto va a cambiar en algún momento? ¿Esto realmente se va a poder reconstruir, mejorar? Tú dices que no está el dinero. O sea, ¿cómo tú ves dentro de lo que yo sé que es tu función, que es posiblemente esa, ver dónde están los fondos y llevarle unos planes a la Corte para que en el proceso de reestructuración de la deuda ellos puedan ver que realmente hay un futuro? Pero ¿cómo tú expresas al público en general si el sistema se va a mejorar?
Yeah. Si tú lees los documentos de 1916, de 2016, 2017, the diagnosis of the problem está ahí en blanco y negro. You can read it, you can see it. What's happened in Puerto Rico is that the decisions aren't made. It's a lack of decision making, kicking the can down the road. What the board is doing is putting in front so everyone can see the uncomfortable conversation for the decision has to be made. Mm-hmm. But what we're not going to do, because you have to make decisions con los ojos abiertos. Mm-hmm. And for too long, you don't want to have the tough decision. You don't want it to have the inconvenient truth of what the system is. Then, how do we fix it? That's why we're still stuck in the PREPA bankruptcy in the Title III. Because if you look at it eyes open, you know that you probably can't pay back $12 billion in debt that they're asking for. Mm-hmm. Because that's $12 billion that's not going into that system that everybody knows is failing. Mm-hmm. That's part of the conversation. And I think everyone recognizes it's important for us to say it. It's important for the board to say it. It's important. But what's happening differently now, you're saying, PREB is doing a rate case, asking the questions, how much does the system need? Take the politics out of it and have an honest conversation. I've worked in politics my life. And politics influences things. But the decisions can't be always based on politics, and they can't be always based on the next election, because decisions have to be made and then actions have to be taken. And what happens here too often is it goes back and forth, right? 4 years, one person, we're going to go this way. 4 years, another person, then we're going to go this way. And then nothing changes for people. What we want to make sure is the money is there. You know, people think that the board is austerity, doesn't want to spend the money. Again, I've been doing this a very long time. The money isn't going anywhere, right? What we're doing is saying you need to make choices about where to put that money, right? The revenues come into Puerto Rico. Government's going to decide where to put those. But make those decisions responsibly. Sí. Same things for PREPA. We have to make those decisions responsibly and then move forward. It's going to take more than a couple of years. And I think people are just tired because it's taken so long. Mm-hmm. But remember, this is 40 years
in the making,
right? Mm-hmm. This is decades of lack of investments, lack of maintenance, decades of kicking the can down the road, and it doesn't happen that fast. And there's no simple answer. Because even ordering a transformer takes 3 years for delivery. So if you order it today, it's going to take 3 or 4 years of delivery. And that's without COVID, without all these other things. So it is a reality that we have to face. And I'm not ignorant to Puerto Rico. There's a status issue that impacts Puerto Rico. I get it. It's focusing on the things that we can control, the decisions that we have to make. You dealt with that issue, right? And you know what that is in Washington. But the things that we can do here, let's not ignore those, and let's not blame, right, that for every other thing that we have. There are things that have to get fixed in many different places. Some of them are political things, and some of them are just basic things that we have to do here. And there's a thing of both.
Fíjate que estás hablando de algo que es bien importante. Primero, estás hablando de la inserción de la parte política en la toma de decisiones. Y estás hablando de la toma de decisiones. Sin entrar, yo no quiero polemizar ni nada por el estilo, pero en el tiempo que tú llevas viendo la operación del gobierno de Puerto Rico, ¿tú crees que ha mejorado la toma de decisiones de los gobernantes en Puerto Rico?
I think there are people in the government who want to act responsibly. And there are other people in the government that don't act responsibly. And my concern is when the board leaves, and we will, who is going to replace the board in acting responsibly? And that means when the legislature passes things that cost too much, you have to veto it, you have to stop it, or the legislature shouldn't pass it. Who is going to do that? And what concerns me is it was no one prior to 2016, right? For 16 consecutive years, no one made some of those choices. And so when the board leaves, someone's going to have to recognize that fiscal responsibility is important and living within the resources. And then we can work on getting additional resources, work on improving the economy, right? If we want to lower taxes, that's fine, but that means there's less money to do some other things. And that's a conversation that you have, and sometimes it's easy just to, point to the board or point to someone else. I made these decisions for a really long time. And in a place like New York, right, there's a desire to spend a lot of money. So we spent money on education, right? We spent money on taxes. We spend money on healthcare and Medicaid, right? So it is no desire not to make investments. It's just to invest in them in a responsible way, looking out for the next 5 years and looking out for the next 10 years. So the reason I say that to you is because I just want the government is going to have to make those choices going forward. And it's easy because we've created an environment where you can act irresponsibly for a few years, but then it's going to come back. And everything that we're focused on is to make sure that this does not happen again.
En el tema, estamos en el tema de energía. Y el tema de energía políticamente tiene controversia. Y durante el último año, muy controversial en la narrativa política de los candidatos a la gobernación que hablaban de vamos a eliminar el contrato de Luma, vamos a cambiar la política pública de parte del Estado, que ha sido hasta ahora, desde el 2018 en adelante, fue una política pública de quitar de las manos de PREPA, de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica, toda la parte de la administración, se queda la parte de la administración, toda la parte de lo que es la transmisión y distribución de energía y la parte de generación. Pero los políticos decían, esto hay que tumbarlo, Luma se va, Luma para afuera. Wow. Y mi posición, por lo menos de opinión, porque de lo que yo hago en la radio, etcétera, era que eso con la boca con la boca es fácil decirlo, pero eso en la práctica, en la ejecución, muy difícil. Por todas las implicaciones que tiene una decisión como esa, de tú decir, ese operador lo vamos a sacar. Porque hay obligaciones, hay presentaciones o representaciones que se le hacen al tribunal en el caso de la reestructuración sobre lo que está pasando con el operador. Hay una realidad de que el sistema, como tú dices, 40 años in the making. Y puede venir Luma, mañana puede venir que el que sea y como quiera va a enfrentar unas situaciones complicadas. Yo te pregunto a ti, ¿cuán real es para un ente que está mirando ¿verdad? A futuro la parte presupuestaria, la parte de desarrollo de infraestructura, la parte de desarrollo de recursos para el pueblo de Puerto Rico, cuán real es que se elimine uno de estos contratos?
Yeah. Whoever is operating the system has to deal with the system as it is, the infrastructure of the system that is aged and old and hasn't been maintained and repaired. Anyone who comes here is going to have to handle that system. So it doesn't matter who the operator is. Also, as we get further away from what happened, people forget this was happening before when PREPA was running the system. The system's getting older and it's failing again. So have the operators been perfect? By no means. Could they improve? Yes. Should we hold them accountable? Absolutely. There needs to be more performance. They need to perform better. But we also need to recognize you can switch them out tomorrow and put the best operator in the world handling the system. But if the system is old and deteriorating, it's still going to fail. You hand someone a car that doesn't run, you can get the race car driver behind the wheel of that car. But if that car can't run, it's still going to fall apart.
Pero ¿cuál sería, por ejemplo, el rol de la Junta?
Yeah.
Tu rol, el rol de la Junta, con una situación como esa. O sea, por ejemplo, vamos a ponerlo desde... Vamos a decir que Luma, con nombre, o Genera. Vamos a dejar a Luma un montón, porque Luma cogió palo y podemos aquí hablar de Luma, pero Genera. Genera, imagínate que tiene fallas en el proceso. ¿Cuál es el rol de la Junta dentro del proceso, ¿verdad? de gobierno donde colabora la Junta con el gobierno local y con las decisiones que se van tomando presupuestarias en el proceso? ¿Cuál es el rol de la Junta con señalar o decirle, mira, hermano, Genera, tienes que, you gotta pick it up, o sea, tienes que mejorar? ¿Cómo es esa comunicación? Si realmente hay comunicación de la Junta con los entes que están ahora mismo manejando este tema.
We weren't doing that until the summer of last year when the system started to fail faster and we wanted to understand what was going on. And what we realized is there was not coordination. There was no prioritization of projects. What do we need to invest in first in order to maintain the system? And I think you're seeing that now, right? Because all of this focus was on the transmission system, but now we know we have a big problem on the generation side. And that just takes time. So the role of the board and what I've been pushing to do is get everyone in a room. And I think we have now, an energy czar, formula headed PREPA, bring everyone together and make sure we're prioritizing and then pushing them to do it. There are things within their control that they could do better. And there are probably things that are out of their control. And if they're out of their control, everyone needs to know it. I think the governor recognizes this and she's been actively focusing on this, but it is something that you have to work on every day. The board is not managing the system. We're managing the finances of the system just to make sure that the budgets are there. But we tried to manage the system. Before I got here, back in 2017, the board attempted to put someone to manage the system. The government fought the board, and that's actually the only case that the board has lost in the courts.
El oficial de transformación.
That's right. So
Noel Samot. En el momento era Noel Samot.
So our role is limited to that, but it also limited to making sure that the finances and that they're prioritizing the projects. Also on the federal projects, right? The board had let the previous governments make decisions regarding the prioritization of where those funds go. We're going to monitor it more. We're going to make sure there's transparency around it more because people just need to see what's going on. Because I think your point that you made earlier is people don't see the light coming, the light at the end of the tunnel, right? People don't actually see it happening. They want to understand how we're going to get from here to there.
Recientemente, hace días, la gobernadora dijo que ahora en verano los apagones se van a multiplicar, o sea, van a aumentar. Y obviamente pues ya eso ya es un warning, una alerta a la gente de que vamos de nuevo para el verano pasado. Y el verano pasado, ¿sabes lo que pasó? Lo que mismo tocaste decir, eso fue lo que te levantó, o lo que les levantó a ustedes la urgencia de meterse más en el tema. hay un elemento que si quiero ver cómo te lo planteo, porque es controversia pública y no sé si la Junta habla o no habla sobre esto, que tiene que ver con tiene una compañía que es dueña de Genera, ¿ok? Que New Fortress. New Fortress tiene un negocio de gas. O sea, ellos venden gas natural y trabajan con gas natural. En Puerto Rico se habla de una diversidad de fuentes de energía. Pero todo tiene que indicar que con un interés del dueño de Genera, de la generación, en el gas, pues por ahí va quizás la generación de energía a hacer toda una generación con el gas. ¿Es esa una ruta correcta? ¿O ustedes no entran en determinar si es correcto o no?
Yeah. This is the interesting point of going back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've said that we're following what the law in Puerto Rico is.
Mm-hmm.
The law in Puerto Rico had renewable goals and renewable targets up until right now, but the legislature just passed them. The same legislature who put those goals in place is now changing them. And we'll have to follow what that is. Personal opinion, right, is that diversity is better. Because in the event of an emergency, we can't limit the resources. Now, the governor seems to follow that as well because you still have 100% renewable goal in her legislation. The question just is how to make sure that we're doing both. People need generation today. They need lights to get turned on today, and we need to have reliable power that's affordable. At the same time, you also want to have independence because, if those gas deliveries don't come or something happens in the global scale and gas prices go up, you have no other choice. So diversification is very important, and we need to make sure that we do that. On the board side, we have to approve the contracts. So we have to approve the gas contracts, we have to approve the solar contracts, we have to approve all of those.
Everything.
So our view on this is going to be, one is it affordable? Is it fair? Is there market competition here so that people of Puerto Rico are getting the best prices they can, right? And then is it meeting the overall goals for Puerto Rico, which goes to right the issue of independence? I spent a lot of time, traveling the island and seeing what's happening, right? Both with my family in Arecibo and then in other parts. And people are doing their own things. You see people, everyone's, the rooftop solar is happening. People are getting tired of the government waiting for that to happen, and those that can are acting on their own. So it's important to see what's happening. Again, not just hopefully now we've passed a law in 2025. Hopefully it doesn't change again, right, in 5 more years, because we need to. Because again, these things take a long time. There's a long runway before you get there.
Mira, voy a hacer el tema de energía con esta pregunta. Tu respuesta a quien diga, vamos a cancelar esos contratos. ¿Cuál es tu respuesta?
What is the alternative? What is the plan to replace them? That has to be the critical thing. And that's where we will end up reviewing it. Because you have to have a plan that works. And the plan can't be to go back to the system that we had before that we know failed, right? That's the reason we're in bankruptcy. That's the reason the system hasn't been maintained. We need to remember that, because we all have short memories. Remember how we got here in 2016 and 2017. So show us the viable alternative, and that's the standard by which we will review that.
Fondos federales. Mira esto. Cuando la Junta comenzó su operación, en aquel momento estábamos todos nuevos. Vamos, porque yo estaba empezando en Prafa, el gobernador era nuevo, había una junta que acababa de empezar hacía unos meses, pero realmente el primer plan fiscal había sido un fiasco de parte de la administración pasada, y cuando nos los pidieron a nosotros, la administración nos pidieron en 30 días un plan fiscal nuevo, era enero 2, y nosotros como, wow, y se extendió por 60 días, se sometió. Pero recuerdo que siempre hubo controversia inicial, esos primeros años, en la Junta entender la importancia o el rol de los fondos federales dentro de la parte de presupuesto del gobierno de Puerto Rico. Hablando de esa realidad y de cómo ese back and forth, ese para adelante y para atrás, en los planes fiscales, ya finalmente yo creo que hay un entendimiento, por lo menos ya no es tan controversial dentro de las proyecciones que se hacen. Más sin embargo, públicamente todo el mundo dice, tacho, Puerto Rico no puede vivir sin los fondos federales. ¿Tú crees que dentro del proceso de presupuesto del gobierno de Puerto Rico de hoy a futuro, ¿verdad? Lo que estás trabajando ahora, hay una manera de que el gobierno de Puerto Rico puede vivir sin tener que estar amparado, abrazado, dependiendo tanto de los fondos federales en salud, en reconstrucción, etcétera? Esa es una pregunta. Y la otra pregunta que te hago es, ¿puede influenciar o no que, por ejemplo, que vengan unos recortes ahora del gobierno federal de parte de Dodge o algo así, ¿verdad? Que ahora, o el Departamento de Educación, que corten, o Medicaid, esos recortes que, ¿verdad? Estamos hablando hipotéticamente, no han pasado, pero si sucedieran, ¿cómo impactan eso? Las posibilidades o las proyecciones que ustedes han tenido sobre el desarrollo de Puerto Rico a futuro.
Yeah. There's a lot in that question.
I'm sorry. Perdona,
Pero first, we have to understand, todos los estados necesitan fondos federales in order to maintain their current level of operations. The biggest ones are healthcare and education. Mm-hmm. In Puerto Rico, those are the biggest ones. In most states, Medicaid is the biggest one.
Puerto Rico, Medicare.
And Medicare, the federal funds in the healthcare space, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So the federal funds in the healthcare space. So it's a matter of degree for Puerto Rico. It is not, like, could any state do without federal funds? Some maybe. The poorer states or the states that have lower incomes, higher level of poverty require more federal funding because mm-hmm. it's progressive. New York required a significant amount of federal funding. If you eliminated the federal funding, they'd have significant challenges funding their healthcare system. Mm-hmm. Okay, even though it's a state that has a lot of wealth. So for Puerto Rico, I look at it and you cannot take out the federal funds out of the budget and say, could we do without those funds? It's not just a question for Puerto Rico, it's a question for a lot of states. When you go to Puerto Rico itself, they rely more on federal funds than most other states. And the median income in Puerto Rico is lower. I've been saying this recently. One is our Medicaid program is not like everyone else's Medicaid program. Mm-hmm. And that's a big amount of the federal funds that we get. In the past, I would say Puerto Rico's should have and the board has advocated for it, a program that is permanent, right, and has stability. But we're in a different place right now. We have to understand that the federal government is cutting spending. Mm-hmm. That's a reality that Puerto Rico has to face, as every other state has to face. They're cutting spending. We have to look at this with eyes open. What is going to be the impact of that, if any, in Puerto Rico? We don't know yet. Mm-hmm. We do know Medicaid funding expires in the end of 27. That we know. We do know that they're looking at the Department of Education now. But what that means for the budget in Puerto Rico, we don't know. So you can't plan for what you don't know. But what you can do is, again, act responsibly. If you know that something's coming, make sure you have some money in reserve. Make sure you know how to deal with this if something happens for a couple of years. And make sure you understand what the risks are. I recently sent a letter to the Department of Education.
Local.
Sí, aquí. I recently sent a letter to the Department of Education asking them, because their budget was about a third federal funding. Now it's 50% federal funding. Some of that is non-recurring federal funds.
Eso que, acuérdate de esto que me estás diciendo, porque quiero hablar de lo que son recurrentes y no recurrentes.
Yeah. So some of the funding is non-recurring. So we sent them a letter recently just saying, tell us how much federal funding you're spending. Tell us how much is non-recurring, and tell me how much of the non-recurring spending are you using on recurring spending. And we want a 5-year plan. I'm saying that in preparation because forget about what the federal government is doing now, which we don't know. Those funds are going away. They were always going away.
Sí, sí, sí.
We knew that. So is there a plan for what you're going to do when those federal funds go away? Forget about cuts. This is just they expire. It's important because if we're doing a budget now, I need to know, do I need to put any more money into education? Because that's got to come from somewhere else. This goes back to choices and decisions and prioritizations. But if you haven't even done that analysis, you don't know. On the Medicaid space and the Medicare space, there's a lot of talk about reductions. We don't know what they are. But what the board can do, and what I've done always, we managed through COVID, we managed through big things in New York by planning for the worst, hoping for the best. And in the end, if you have resources extra, it's going to go back to the people anyway, right? It's not going anywhere else. If you didn't spend it today, it's going to be there tomorrow. So that's what you need to do. So Puerto Rico, could you survive without the federal funds? Not. The short answer to your question is not the level of services that you are providing today with the tax system that you have today. Because the money is finite. So you either have to cut services or raise taxes. Those are the choices.
Ok, mira esta pregunta. No sé si este número tú lo tienes. Tú tienes un número de cuánto de los fondos federales que el gobierno de Puerto Rico utiliza son recurrentes y cuántos no. O eso es, that's a figure that's complicated.
Well, because of all the disaster relief, most states don't have as much disaster emergency funds that Puerto Rico has. So Puerto Rico has a lot of disaster emergency funds. But I use the energy one, for example. $17 billion, right? Only spent about $3.5 billion. So you have a lot that's left, right? So far, Congress hasn't spoken about removing the emergency funds. So, that's good news so far.
Y yo no espero eso. Lo que pasa es que, por ejemplo, se tomaron decisiones en un momento dado con fondos no recurrentes para darle un aumento a los maestros, para darle un aumento a, la policía. No puedo precisar ahora todo lo que se utilizó el fondo no recurrente, pero evidentemente es insostenible en la medida en que no esté desde los fondos estatales. Y da una impresión de que de parte del gobierno en un momento dado hubo una cantidad grande de fondos no recurrentes, y no quiero hablarle de los fondos de recuperación. Bueno, maybe, digamos, de pandemia, donde hubo una bonanza, pero mucho dinero que entró, pero se utilizó correctamente. O sea, se pensó correctamente sobre dónde iban a poner ese dinero que realmente no hiciera falta después hacer malabares, hacer magia para que apareciera dinero del dinero estatal para cubrir esa necesidad. Porque, por ejemplo, en eso mismo ahora vamos a hablar del aumento de los maestros que se les dio. Ese aumento es sostenible a futuro. O sea, tenemos el dinero estatal para poder mantener eso.
Yeah, it's a good question. In regards to the teacher salaries, that was one of the first things I did, which was say, stop using the federal funds. We're going to have to start using general funds. We're going to have to build that into our projections going forward because we don't want to have a cliff. So we started last year including the full funding for the teacher salaries. And we're doing that analysis. We're doing it everywhere. So in the entire budget, we're doing the analysis. Where are we spending federal funds on items that are recurring? And how are we going to pay for it when those funds go away? I don't want to sit back and second guess whether the money is used properly because it's not that productive. But if you dig yourself a hole, right, what I do need to work on is how do we get ourselves out of the hole, right? Forget about how we got here. It doesn't matter. This is where we are. But what you can plan for is how do we get out of here and how do we make sure that we don't do it again? That's the exercise that's now. And that's the exercise that's important because over the next 4 years, I anticipate that we're going to have 4 balanced budgets, hopefully with this governor. And during that time, we need to fix the budget for the next 5 years. Every year, 5 years ahead. I used to do 6 years ahead in New York. Every year, 5 years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to pay for everything? Everything. And things that don't even know are going to come up. Because you know what I know? Every year, something happens that you'd never expected.
Seguro.
Every single year, and not small things, big things, major things.
Sí, sí. Nadie esperaba un 9/11, nadie esperaba un Sandy, nadie esperaba un María, la pandemia. Siempre ocurre algo. Siempre
What's
ocurre
going
algo.
on in the federal government now, right? None of these things are planned for. So you always have to plan for those
Okay.
things.
Robert, hay gente que dice que la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal es un gobierno permanente, que llegaron y no se van.
Yeah.
La Junta se va.
Yes.
¿Cuándo?
I think we can get done in the next 4 years. I want to be done in the next 4 years. This was never, for me, going to be a long-term thing. Like I said to you earlier in this thing, I was at the end of my, government career and budget career. I do think that what we're doing here is really important for the future stability of Puerto Rico. And like I said before, the amount of savings that have been the result of the board is incalculable. People don't want to speak about it, but it's very real. But I also understand that we are an imposition on the government, democratically elected government. I take that very seriously. Like the decisions that we make I don't like saying no. I try really hard not to say no and try to get to something. But if we have to, we will, if we feel like it's fiscally irresponsible. But the plan is right now, we're working with the government right now, the new government. We need an accounting system. We need 5-year plans. We need what a lot of other states have in regard to financial management. You need to take the job of financial management seriously. I mentioned this earlier. The budget position in most states is the most, if not among the most important positions. Look at the federal government. You know this from your position, your time in federal Washington. What's the most important job in the federal government?
OMB.
OMB.
Es más, para temas de los fondos de recuperación y eso, OMB era realmente el decision maker, era el quien tomaba la decisión.
If you're going to manage the finances properly, you need to understand that is the start point.
Sí, sí, sí.
Budget balance and financial management is the start point. It is not a secondary point. It is not after. You asked me some of the things I'm surprised about here. I'm surprised is that the budget is kind of a secondary thing. We'll figure that out later.
Es que no se entiende.
Every year it's
Es que no lo entiende.
we'll work it out.
Robert, no lo entiende. Mucha gente no lo entiende. Mucha gente piensa... Mira, Robert, hace poco aquí hubo una controversia. Una controversia con una agencia que tiene un presupuesto para supuestamente un pork barrel, ¿verdad? Ok. A eso no se le aplica la de, oye, no tenemos chavo, no gastemos de más. Para ayudar o para programas de beneficencia está aquello, esto, lo otro. Y esto, pero es que la política va primero. Entonces, ese entendimiento de, hermano, estos chavos no son tuyos. Y digo, si se presupuesta, vamos a usarlo para lo que es. Vamos a usarlo para algo correcto, para algo que realmente es una necesidad. Uno mira la legislación que hay allá afuera o mira lo que ha ocurrido. Y no quiero decir que en todas las facetas o en todas las áreas, pero hay signos que pareciesen que no se entendiese de dónde estamos y de dónde venimos en estos últimos años, desde el punto de vista fiscal. Y por eso es que yo te digo, la Junta se queda, la Junta se va. O sea, la Junta ve estas cosas y ¿qué hace? ¿Qué dice cuando ve cosas como esas? ¿Me entiendes? O sea, cuando hay una toma de decisiones que quizás no es la correcta. Y hay cosas que a veces uno no las ve a plain view, o sea, a simple vista, pero hay cosas que se ven a simple vista. Hay cosas que son muy obvias. Y quizás un planteamiento que yo te hago, yo sé que la Junta tiene 3 o 4 cosas que tiene que hacer. Tiene que balancear los presupuestos con los 4 corridos, tiene que permitir que Puerto Rico pueda accesar los mercados financieros, o sea, el crédito mejorar, ¿Cuál era la tercera? Es una... balancear el presupuesto, el mercado y...
Market access. Those are the two.
Ok,
Those
ok.
are the two.
La pregunta es, más allá de eso, en la práctica, ¿hay otras razones por las que la Junta impone cómo se hacen cosas, cómo se revisan cosas? ¿Tú crees que de verdad 9 años después, 8 años después de operación, el gobierno ha entendido lo que tiene que hacer cuando la Junta no esté?
I look at it in 3 phases. There's 3 phases of what the board had to do. The first was the one we spoke about in the beginning. Restructure the debt. There is no way out of the hole if you're paying 25 cents on every dollar. Check. Almost done. Except for PREPA, right? PREPA's the last one, but we've done 10. We'll get PREPA done, one way or the other. Second phase, stabilize the budget. 16 consecutive years, spending more than you took in. The board now has control of the finances. We've stabilized the budget.
Pero me acabas de decir, se lo ha hecho la Junta. El gobierno no lo ha hecho.
We are doing it.
Okay.
Step 3 is what you're going to. Step 3 is now, how do we establish permanent reforms to be fiscally responsible? And that might mean changing laws, that might more transparency, all the things that we're talking about, making sure that budget is a priority, that you understand, like in OMB, like where I come from in New York, like most other states, it is the job. Right? And it's not, politics can't come before that. And that is, I think, where the stumble was here, right? It's politically not convenient to make some of these decisions. And that's not me saying it. You saw it, 16 consecutive years of not making decisions when you knew you didn't have enough money. That's the third part. That's the third part, the part that I'm here for. Let's build the budget office. Let's build an accounting system. Let's put rules, a debt policy, rules in place so that this does not happen again. Because the reins, we have to turn over what we're doing to the government. And it can't just be one day we're here, one day we're gone. We have to now start turning these things over and working with the government. And we're engaged with them right now. And we have every indication that they want to work with us to do that.
Hay un área en promesa en la ley. Y ahorita mencionaste la controversia que tuvo el gobierno con la Junta a un momento dado sobre el oficial de transformación. Y el rol que podía tener en un momento que lo querían asignar a Prepa. No pasó. Pero más allá de Prepa, es un rol a nivel macro de todo lo que pueda hacer un proyecto de desarrollo económico para Puerto Rico, que este oficial y que la ley federal le permite a la Junta y en ese rol adelantar, empujar hacia adelante cosas que pueden ser significativas para Puerto Rico. Hay gente que dice que la Junta no ha hecho nada en ese respecto. Hay gente que dice que ahí se han dormido, que teniendo el poder no lo han usado. ¿Cuál es tu respuesta a eso?
Yeah. I would say that's part A and B of the last phase.
Okay.
Permanent reforms, and it was talking about economic development, the revitalization coordinator aspect of this. That part is important because there are 2 reasons Puerto Rico went bankrupt. One was 20 years of a slowing economy, and then you didn't recognize that, and you didn't make the right decisions, okay? So we'll make the permanent reforms, but you need an economy that grows again. That's what Title V of PROMESA is about. We're also working with the government on that, right? That's a long-term plan. It is, but it's some things that PROMESA was not what Detroit had, and it's not what Washington, D.C. had, which was a control board. Control boards, more controversial, but it's easier to get things done because you just say you're doing it and it gets done. You want to change the permit laws? We're changing them. We don't have to go through a legislature. We don't have to go through we're going to do it. That's one of the things that holds Puerto Rico back, right? Businesses can't grow. It's hard. You all hear it all the time. Control board, you make it happen. Permanent reforms on the budget, you make it happen. So this part, we're working with the government on, our agenda also is one of growth. Tax reforms, permitting reforms, what's an economic development plan for Puerto Rico? How do we invest in businesses? But these are all tied together. You could not have economic development if you were paying 25 cents of every dollar for the debt. right? You can't have economic development even in manage your finances because then you can't cut taxes, you can't make investments in things. So in my mind, they're sequential. This is the last phase. This is the plan, but it's also about execution. And the board is not an executing entity. We can say this is what's supposed to be done. We can say no, things, but we can't force things to happen. We have some tools, right? And tools of the budget.
Pero en el tema de desarrollo económico, y esta la última pregunta de este tema, y te voy a hacer una última pregunta. Tengo dos preguntas más. Es esta de desarrollo económico, que es, fíjate que tú has visto estos últimos años aquí. Hay gente que dice que el desarrollo económico está sujetado a los fondos federales que hablamos ahorita, que pueden ser no recurrentes. Olvidando los fondos federales un momento. ¿Dónde tú has visto el área de oportunidad para Puerto Rico para desarrollar económicamente, para crecer en riqueza, para crecer en términos de atraer más ingresos al Estado, que no sea taxes, que no sea... y que no necesariamente tenga que ver, o si tiene que ver, que sea de manera indirecta, pero con los fondos federales? ¿Dónde tú ves la oportunidad de Puerto Rico para crecer y desarrollarse económicamente?
I'm optimistic because I speak to people every day who think Puerto Rico is an attractive place to be, want to grow businesses in Puerto Rico, but they raise some issues. Affordable housing is an issue, right? Being able to start a business, compete in business. But we're starting to see things happen already, right? There's a tech sector that's growing here. There's a service sector that's growing. When the world changed after COVID, now you can do anything from anywhere in the world, right? It accelerated trends that were already happening. How does Puerto Rico capitalize on that? How do we encourage people to want to be here and welcome them here, right? So we don't want people to leave Puerto Rico. We want people to come back. But we also want to bring more people here, probably if you want to grow the economy. But those are choices that Puerto Rico needs to decide what they want to be in the future. And they have to have a consensus around it.
Do you think that we know? O sea, ¿tú crees que estamos viendo eso?
No, and that's why I'm saying it now. Because the board can't impose on Puerto Rico what it needs to be.
No, de acuerdo, pero tú estás viendo. O sea, tú estás viendo para dónde va el tren.
Yeah.
Tú sabes por dónde está caminando, tú sabes hacia dónde. O sea, y esto, yo estoy claro que tú no vas a imponer, pero sí puedes guiar. O sea, sí puedes decirle, hey, mira, si sigues por ahí, ese no es el destino. O por lo menos no vas a poder llegar al destino. O sea, yo entiendo que no es el rol de ustedes, ni tú como director ejecutivo de imponer, pero tú entiendes que a veces también quizás hace falta un poquito de, hey.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing. So we've had meetings, hundreds of different people, all the business sector people, bringing them all together. What do you think? That's why we put out a report recently on healthcare. That's why we're talking about education. These may not be things that you traditionally think, why is the board involved in these places? Because people want to live in places where the education system works and you have a healthcare system that works, right? And then when it comes to businesses want to know that they have the ability to grow and create jobs. And I talk to business people all the time. I'm going to have a meeting later on today, affordable housing. I want people who want to live here. We can bring them here and hire them. They complain they don't have, right, affordable housing. How do we help with those things? The budget becomes important because if you're not being responsible on this side, we don't have any resources to do anything on this other side. And we will provide this guidance. And we're not doing it just from the board. We're doing it by involving everyone into that conversation. It is the hardest part because I think, since 936 ended to now, right, there hasn't been a consensus around what do we do next. And 20 years of decline, you didn't make the right decisions, you went bankrupt, we're out of the bankruptcy, the crisis is now over. Where do we want to go from here? We have resources and opportunity now to make choices work with the government, work with the private sector, and come up with those things. And it's a balance because you need to protect the environment in Puerto Rico, you need to protect all of those things, but you also need the money to pay for the services.
La última pregunta que te voy a hacer, porque tengo como 200 más, pero si no, me regañan aquí, no. Tengo como 200 más, puedo estar 3 horas más aquí, pero esta es una pregunta que no tiene nada que ver con la Junta. Tiene que ver con una experiencia de gobierno que tú y yo la tenemos muy similar. Tú, lo que yo conozco, tienes una relación muy cercana con Cuomo, o sea, mucha confianza, igual que la que yo tuve con el gobernador Rosselló cuando trabajé con él. Y los dos, a nosotros nos tocó vivir, aunque yo había renunciado 3 meses antes al gobierno, pero nos tocó vivir la renuncia de un gobernador. ¿Sabes? Porque tú viviste cuando Cuomo tuvo que renunciar, yo viví cuando Rosselló tuvo que renunciar, yo volví a Fortaleza a estar ayudándolo y cerca de él en esos días porque estaba solo, o sea, se habían ido un montón de gente. Como funcionario de gobierno y como amigo, o sea, como persona que lo conoce, que conoce a la persona, cuando uno ve todo eso, ¿cómo fue esa experiencia para ti?
Yeah. You know, I know when you work in these environments, it's 24 hours a day, right? It's very intense. You build relationships because I wouldn't do it if I didn't think we were doing good and doing the right thing, right? Politics, as you know, can come in a wave and it overcomes, right, all the good that you do. For me, I was okay with the situation because I know in what I was doing, we did our best. We had change and we saw things happen, right? Things really happen. And then you have the personal that sometimes, influences that, right? So I always have compassion, right, for what happened. I know in these environments, right, they're pointing at everyone at any time, right? Anything could happen, right, to anyone because it's very competitive and people's goals sometimes differ. The reason I was able to, work for Republicans, work for Democrats, right, then, come here and do this, I think is because I have one goal in mind, right, is to do the best I can to serve the people. And I do believe that here, while I'm here in Puerto Rico, when I was in New York, I was serving the people of New York. Not necessarily serving any one person, I was serving the people of New York, and we got a lot of things done. And here, the same thing. And that's what I hang my hat on. So I'm very proud of what happened there. I'm sure you are proud of the time that you did and what you got done. And I am very proud of the time I have there and what we got done. And, the past is the past. You never know what the future is going to hold. All we can do is do the best we can every single day in what we're doing.
Definitely. Robert Mujica, te agradezco un montón que hayas sacado tu tiempo. Yo sé que estás súper ocupado. Y honestamente, yo admiro lo que estás haciendo. Sé que dentro de tú como funcionario público, que nos has hablado hoy de toda tu trayectoria, pero yo sé que aquí a veces la gente no entiende el toll, o sea, lo que esto conlleva. A veces la gente lo ve muy frío de afuera, pero el trabajo es un trabajo difícil, duro, bregar con las cortes, bregar con los abogados, bregar con el gobierno, bregar con la política, bregar con todos los intereses que llegan y que todo el mundo tiene algo que decir, algo que hacer. Así que no pasa desapercibido en mí el gran trabajo que estás haciendo y honestamente te deseo todo el éxito del mundo, porque el éxito que tú tengas va a ser el éxito que Puerto Rico pueda tener a futuro. Así que agradecido por eso que estás haciendo.
Gracias.
Y gracias por estar aquí. A usted le gusta lo que está viendo aquí, le gusta esta gran entrevista, usted dele like, suscríbase, comente. Nosotros vamos a estar comentando esta entrevista más adelante porque aquí hemos podido tener una oportunidad que yo creo que es única de poder entrar en unos temas con el director de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal que normalmente no se entran, no se discuten. Estuvimos un buen rato hablando sobre ello. Yo creo que es una gran entrevista, una entrevista que tengo que digerirla porque hay mucha información, pero agradecido de la sintonía que ustedes le dan a este contenido que producimos de aquí directamente de este canal de Carlos Mercader, directamente de La Diestra. Nosotros nos vemos en el próximo episodio.